If you want an apt practical description of what Inq28 is, please check out X Profundus's What is Inq28 article, link in the description. Inq28 and Blanchitsu and other related stuff like Term28 and just the kit bashing tag and just the general dark fantasy crowd is loads of fun. The creativity on display is always astounding, and the community on Instagram is one of the best niches within the Warhammer community that I have seen. Looking past that though, I will now be talking about a very generalized interpretation of Inq28 and a reason why I really like it. I am going to be primarily focusing on the Imperium, but in reality, the Inq28 aesthetic and philosophy can and should be applied to every single faction in all of Warhammer, AOS, Fantasy, and or 40k, all of them. Now, a big part of Warhammer is entropy. It takes fantasy and sci-fi tropes and displays them through the lens of entropy. Endless, irrational war subsumes all, and suffering is inevitable. However, this depiction often becomes blurry because
epic space marine
which is an aesthetic that appeals to monkey action brain. It's an aesthetic I'm sure helped most of us get into Warhammer, but it's kind of shooting us in the part of the brain that helps us understand what Warhammer is actually saying with its lore and aesthetics. The satire inherent to Warhammer varies in its efficiency. This is a reason why I think Inq28 is important and good and cool and more epic than any Space Marine pursuit. Instead of going for the heavy metal style, Inq28 often shows what I would argue, in my opinion, is something closer to what I perceive as the true state of the Warhammer universes. Inq28 is good at showing the uncensored depiction of decay, of totalitarian power structures, of unknowable death machines within which lives are but replaceable cogs. It is slavery to ideology, to tradition, to the state, to aristocracy, a rejection of progression, a submission to mindless servitude, inarticulate class division, wanton paranoia, and hatred of the lesser and the other, the embrace of entrenched mindsets that truly are only put there to continue the endless war and suffering for suffering's sake. All of these factors are not only applied, but taken to their horrible, very funny logical conclusions. Inq28 puts heavy focus on individuals, each model or unit often telling a story, and a story consistently told is a depiction of the ridiculous, numbing, yet fantastical evil that Warhammer's entropy fosters. Common aesthetic signifiers symbolize austerity, traditionalism, and, of course, war, blended together in a neatly morbid package. Rust, rot, grime, and muck are used alongside archaic, simplistic, or impractical apparel and war gear, often evoking some form of ideology in their designs. Mutation and mutilation, too, are common, and for as much hatred as there is between humanity and the other, the line between the human, the alien, and the demonic is often hazy. It is aesthetic over practicality, taken to its lowest depths, and this is, I'd argue, the factor that makes Warhammer's look what it is, and why it is so appealing. In the Imperium especially, there isn't a single rational, practical thought behind any design decision in any part of their arsenal. If there is something that happens to be practical in any sense, that's by accident. It is ridiculous, and it is entirely on purpose. Rationality is excised because reason demands thought, and thought is dissent. Reason is heresy. As a side note, it is why we even have Space Marine Scream Heresy and Perch Cool Epic Haha. They are just another facet of the Imperium's irrationality, and an allusion to the nascent symbolism it clings to in the face of being crushed under its own myriad incompetencies. This goes even further when it comes to the flagrant sanitization of and obsession with death. Whether it be the death of oneself or the demise of others, it is undeniably a pivotal part of the overarching aesthetic. A meaningful character not carrying a single skull on their model is less common than those with at least two. Intense, ludicrous mutilation of the body, self-inflicted or otherwise, is also customary, as another aspect of dedication within many different Warhammer factions is conducted by offering up one's physical self to the twisted, often regressive beliefs and subcultures that have taken root in an age of degenerative darkness. These analytical aspects, and many more, all tend to come to the center stage upon modeling and painting Inq28 because of its focus on the smaller stories within the universes. And these universes, as you may know, are fantastical hellscapes with bold discomfort and adventurous suffering. It is worth noting that this is, again, my interpretation. There is not a unified definition of what makes Inq28 Inq28. And many times, Inq28 creations defy conventional understanding. Its story is only told through metaphor, suggestion, or individual interpretation. But there are, without question, underlying patterns, and these patterns ultimately have their roots in illustration. The kind of artwork that Inq28 emulates has always existed in Games Workshop books, effectively depicting their worlds as theatric in their grimness, going so far back as the Rogue Trader days. The Inq28 style has its origin in these art pieces, especially those of science fiction Mona Lisa illustrator John Blanche, who is frequently cited as a driving force in establishing the appeal of Warhammer's aesthetics. Blanche, alongside his contemporaries like Ian Miller and Adrian Smith and many others, established a certain tone through their artwork, and this artwork is still heavily used to this day. However, these pieces are often juxtaposed by the presence of cleaner, shinier, and more propaganda-esque pieces that create a bit of dissonance when viewed together without context. A thing I think is good about this kind of art and the aesthetics of Inq28 is that it does nothing to glorify the entropic ideologies it depicts. The more propaganda-esque pieces, like Gilliman watching over the unified forces of the Imperium, can accidentally give the impression that these are the good guys. The Imperium, nor any other faction, are the good guys. It's rot all the way down, packs of shitty bastards in a shitty bastard world, and that is, I'd argue, the primal essence of Warhammer, and what Inq28 is all about depicting. It tells stories of those that are affected most by these humongous, sweeping evils, these power structures flopping and bouncing into one another like inflatable tube men in a storm, no one bounce having any substantial effect on a macro level, but with devastating effects throughout time and space on all those shitty little bastards living and suffering in the micro. Also, Monkey Visual Brain loves a horse guy! Ah, little fiend! What story will you tell me? We love Primate Body when look weird! The audacity of this ape! I think that's it. Okay, Anju, time to start your Inq28 project. Coming soon, part 2, how Bimba Bulbafeast encapsulates all of the discussed themes.